Now today, the theme that we are covering is fluoride, to fit with our weekly theme of oral health around the UK. Water fluoride is something that we talk about a lot. Here at the Oral Health Foundation, we are very pro water fluoride, but we've brought in Dr Louis Mackenzie, who is the Chief Dental Officer at Denplan and also a lecturer at Birmingham University. He knows an awful lot about fluoride and the benefits of it, as well as how we have done our research to make sure that it is safe for all of us. A big thanks to Oral-B as well for introducing us to Louis. We had a really interesting conversation and it couldn't have happened without you, so thank you. Thank you for sitting and spending some time talking to me about this topic. I know it's something that you have a lot of knowledge on. If anyone listening doesn't know who you are, do you want to just give yourself a quick introduction as to who you are, what you do?
Hi, Sophie. Thanks very much. My name is Louis Mackenzie. I'm the head dental officer at Denplan, and I've been a dentist for over 30 years, and I've been involved in dental education for 20 years. I'm a lecturer, a part-time lecturer at Birmingham University and at King's College in London. So a massive thank you to the Oral Health Foundation for asking me to come and chat to you about the exciting subject of water fluoridation.
Yeah, well, it is exciting, and it is interesting when you start to look into it. And I have to be honest, before I started working at the foundation, I didn't really know very much about fluoride in general, let alone water fluoride. So, I mean, what is water fluoridation?
Well, quite simply, this is about adding fluoride to tap water. So we get it up to this sort of key level, which is 1 part per million in the water, which is about 1 milligram per litre. And then by people drinking fluoridated water and using it for cooking, this can help them to prevent tooth decay. And it works in children and it works in adults as well.
Mm-hmm. Why fluoride? What makes it so important for our oral health?
Fluoride is, we'll probably recognise the name because it's the active ingredients in toothpastes, such as those made by our friends at Oral-B. But fluorides themselves, it's actually a fluoride is actually a chemical compound that's got fluorine in it, which is a natural element, and one other element, and it occurs in water everywhere and also in soil. And way back in 1945 in the United States, it was discovered that in a particular area of Michigan, in a town called Grand Rapids, they realized that the population there had significantly less tooth decay. And scientists eventually found out that this was because they were drinking water that had this fluoride in it naturally at this right level. So fluoridation means adding a little bit more fluoride if it's needed to get the tap water up to the level when it's just right and it's at this protective level.
That's really interesting. I didn't know about that. That's then how they found out how important it was, just by sheer coincidence of looking at, oh, well, this town has actually brilliant dental health, and it's because of their water supply. That's really interesting. So how exactly does the fluoride work?
Well, it stops tooth decay. First thing we need to do is sort of think about how our teeth actually decay. Tooth decay is, unfortunately, it is still, and it always has been, it's the most common disease in the world. Affects millions and millions of people across the world. And it shouldn't really happen because our enamel is the hardest substance in the human body. It's harder than our bones. It's actually as hard as steel. But unfortunately, enamel has got this Achilles heel, and it's that it will dissolve in acids. Now, so we've all got plaque on our teeth, and if this hangs around for too long, if we don't brush our teeth, for example, the bacteria in the plaque produce acids as part of their chemical processes, and it's these acids generated by the bacteria that actually damage the enamel. And if the enamel continues to dissolve, you actually get a cavity, you actually get a hole in the tooth. But up to that point, the process is completely reversible. Once a cavity forms, a tooth will need to have a filling. You need to go and see a dentist. But up to the point where it forms a cavity, fluoride can actually prevent or even reverse this decaying process before that cavity forms.
How then does the fluoride protect the teeth? I know it's important, but how does it work?
The first one are called systemic effects. Now, this is particularly sort of focused on children, and the way that this works is if children, if they take enough fluoride in their diets when their teeth are developing, it actually improves the chemical structure of the enamel on their teeth, creates a substance that's called fluorohydroxyapatite. Now, this substance is more resistant to attack by acids. So the benefits can actually start before you're even born, and they can continue up until you're about age 18 to 20. This is when your last teeth are developing. If you've got wisdom teeth, that is when they will erupt. So that's the first one, the systemic effects. It actually makes the teeth stronger. The next one is called topical effects or surface effects. Now, this was discovered in the 1950s. Now, this is the most important effect of fluoride, and this helps your teeth after they've erupted. So children and adults throughout life. When the teeth are dissolving or decaying, as I was talking about, the actual process, it's called demineralization. And it's called that because the minerals in the teeth, such as calcium and phosphate, they actually come out of the enamel into the saliva. Now, if you've got some fluoride about, then if it's in sufficient concentration, this actually helps the minerals go back into the enamel. Now, unsurprisingly, this process, a bit of the process is called remineralization. And when these minerals go back into the teeth, it actually makes the enamel stronger than it was before. And of course, this is where fluoride toothpastes were invented back in the 50s. The first one was actually from Oral-B. It was Crest. Crest was the first ever fluoride toothpaste, and in fact, it was one of the first TV adverts as well. I'm not old enough quite to remember that, but so Crest, that was made by Procter and Gamble, and Oral-B is now part of the Procter and Gamble family. So these topical effects really sort of do help explain that. So really, since the 1970s, there's been a dramatic improvement in people's oral health across the world, and a massive amount of that has been caused by fluoride. And then the final action, so we've got the systemic, we've got the topical, and then the final action where fluoride can help is actually acts on the bacteria in our mouths themselves. It can actually reduce the amount of acid that they produce, and it does this by interfering with the bacterial enzymes. So it's a sort of a three sort of pronged attack, but they all aim to do the same thing.
So if we then added a load of fluoride to the water supply, which is what the water fluoridation essentially means, to get it up to that level that you were talking about earlier, does that then mean we don't need to brush our teeth?
But no, definitely not. A really good question. We still need to brush our teeth twice a day, and ideally using an electric toothbrush with the round oscillating, rotating head, because that will get more plaque off. We also, of course, need to look at our diets and limit the amount of sugar that we've got in our diets. And this is actually why fluoridation has been shown to be extra effective in poorer areas of the country or poorer areas of the world. Because there are so many studies that show that in these areas, people tend to have more unhealthy diets, more sugar in the diets, for example, and they don't brush their teeth as often. So these are areas where fluoridation of the water has an even more dramatic effect, because it's always available to the children and to adults as well.
So one of the things that comes up a lot, say if we do a piece of activity around fluoride and the benefits of fluoride, then it's always brought up that there can be risks to fluoridation and water fluoride, and safety generally is a concern. Whether it's misinformed or not is a different conversation, but the issue of safety does come up a fair bit. So how can we know it's safe to use? What kind of research has been done around the safety of fluoridation?
It's such a brilliant question, Sophie, and absolutely, safety is absolutely key. But the good news is that the safety of fluoridation has been proved beyond doubt all over the world. Because fortunately now we've got 70 years of evidence that drinking and cooking with water with this amount of fluoride is completely safe and can have the sort of 8 key benefits for children and adults. So reduced number of decayed teeth, reduces or ideally eliminates the need to have teeth filled, reduces the risk of missing teeth if you have fluoride when you're a child. The studies for decades have shown you're going to get less missing teeth as an adult. It increases the percentage of children who've never had any tooth decay at all, which is amazing. So children are going to get less toothache. We're going to get less abscesses on teeth as well. Now, because if a cavity continues to grow, it gets through the enamel, it gets to the dentine of the tooth, which is a bit softer on the inside, and then it can move more rapidly. And then eventually, if it's not fixed by a dentist, then it can actually get into the pulp of the tooth, which is the soft middle bit of the tooth with the nerves and blood vessels in it. And this is a dental abscess. And quite often, particularly with children, if they if they get a dental abscess, quite often they actually have to have the tooth taken out. Mm-hmm. So literally just by fluoridating the water and reducing this risk, we're going to get fewer teeth taken out. Now, often when children are having teeth removed because they're decayed, they have to have this done in hospital, and so they have to have a general anaesthetic. In fact, it is the most common cause of young children having to go to hospital. And of course, this takes up masses of NHS resources, with anaesthetists, with hospital beds, with operating theatres, with nursing staff, with doctors and dentists, and so if we can actually reduce that, that really sort of helps the NHS. And there's another side to it as well, because it's been shown in fluoridated areas, if you actually reduce the amount of dental disease, this massively reduces the cost of having to have dental treatment, having to have fillings and things like that. So in fluoridated areas, as the studies show, you can actually get about a 60% saving on dental treatment as well, which is obviously great for patients, but it's brilliant for the NHS as well, because as we know, funds have never been more needed in the wider medical profession.
Yeah, a lot of benefits then to fluoride that the average person maybe wouldn't necessarily know, and it can do masses for you. So why isn't everywhere given access to fluoridated water if it has this many benefits to it?
Again, that's such a really, really important point. And of course, in some areas, in a few areas of the UK and across the world, the level of fluoride is exactly right, just naturally. But in most places in the UK, the natural level is too low to have this beneficial effect. So most places need some extra artificial fluoride adding. So this does create these barriers to fluoridating the whole of the UK, which are hopefully these barriers are going to come down soon. Now, the first one, of course, is, like any sort of process with water treatment, there's a cost to it. But the research has shown now that the long-term financial benefits massively outweigh the initial cost of actually putting fluoride into drinking water. Second challenge is that currently it's the local authorities. They actually have to tell the water companies to fluoridate the water in that particular area. This then creates a challenge because obviously the UK is divided up into all these different sort of areas, and the water might actually come from a different area. For example, I live in Birmingham, and we get our drinking water, which is fluoridated, but we get it from Wales. So hopefully this new centralised NHS bill will help to overcome these sort of local problems. And finally, and possibly one of the biggest challenges that we're actually going to face is that in the past, as I'm sure your listeners have read, that there've been public protests about people having fluoride put into their drinking water, even though obviously it is for their benefit. We've only just got to think about sort of the recent protests around the COVID-19 vaccine. Where, although it was saving millions of lives across the world, people had a choice. They could have the vaccine, or they could not have the vaccine. Now, fortunately, of course, the vast majority of people had their vaccinations. But with water, it's more tricky because everybody drinks water, so you can't really choose not to have it. Again, even if you're living in an area now that's not fluoridated, you might be drinking some bottled water or some drinks or some food products. They're actually made in a factory in a fluoridated area, so it is a real challenge. So this is going to be one of the challenges that we're going to have to face as a nation, is for the public health benefits to outweigh the negative aspects, which are bound to crop up. I read a really good article very recently just on this subject by Sir Paul Beresford. He's an MP, but he's also a dentist, and he's originally from New Zealand. Now, Hastings in New Zealand is one of the world's first areas to fluoridate, the first cities to fluoridate their water. This was in 1954. Now, as the story goes, when the mayor of Hastings actually, the ceremony to actually pull the lever for the water fluoridation, this was the beginning of an absolute public outcry in that area. People are apparently immediately sort of putting every sort of ache or pain or ailment that they were experiencing down to the fact that they'd got fluoride in their water. He wrote that apparently one of the worst things was that New Zealanders were actually sort of complaining that it had made their tea taste differently. It made their tea taste funny. But then the ironic thing that was revealed a few weeks later was that the ceremony was literally that. It was just a ceremony, and the actual pulling of the lever actually hadn't put any fluoride in the water, because the part, they were still waiting for the part that connected the pipe, which was coming all the way from the UK. So that's one that's one good example where public perception might sort of cause a little bit of friction. I remember an example that we were taught when we were students at Birmingham Dental School. Birmingham was one of the first places to be fluoridated, the first place to be fluoridated artificially in the UK. And almost immediately, this was in 1964, and almost immediately there were protests, and there was a lobby. There was an anti-fluoridation lobby created. Now, one of the key spokespeople for this lobby was a very famous novelist. And she wrote to the local water board and said that I shall no longer be drinking any water that comes out of the tap because it's been fluoridated. Now I'm going to switch to drink entirely. And she mentioned the name of a famous bottled water. Anyway, Birmingham Dental School, there's loads of scientists there. So on reading this letter, they sort of had the bright idea to actually test the bottled water that this famous person was drinking, and lo and behold, it contained considerably more fluoride than the tiny level of fluoride that was being put into the water in Birmingham. And the famous story is that they wrote a nice letter to say this, that actually, the water you're drinking buying out of these bottles has actually got more fluoride, and apparently they got a beautifully worded, very, very polite letter back to say, thank you so much for doing that research. I will now stop drinking that water as well.
I love stories like that.
So we are going to face these challenges, but it's really important that we face these challenges, because fluoride obviously is going to be a massive benefit to the whole population.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about it, because we are really hopeful that it is going to come in UK wide, and we're going to all get fluoridated water, but there isn't a lot of information out there about it, and that gap where you don't know a lot about something, but it's going to be added to the water, and just people can understandably get a little bit nervy about it. So it's really good to go, okay, well, no, these are the benefits. It's all been proven, and have that conversation in a calm manner, so that we can deal with the fringe that disagree with it. And I love that story of the water and the author. I like that. But how much of the UK at the moment actually has this fluoridated water?
At the moment, it's only about 10%. So it works out about 5.8 million people in England have been drinking fluoridated water for decades. Internationally, 25 countries have fluoridation programs, so that's about 400 million people across the world. But in the UK, we are way behind our sort of, if you like, contemporaries: Canada, USA, Australia, New Zealand. These countries, they're about 60 to 80% fluoridated already. Major cities: New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dublin, Rio, Hong Kong, Sydney, Melbourne. Really our major cities is sort of Newcastle, sort of the northeast area. About 40% is fluoridated, and Birmingham, as I say, which was the first in 1964. And Birmingham's actually quite a good example, because the West Midlands is actually nationally one of the most deprived regions of the UK, but 70% of the water is fluoridated, and so this creates a really good scientific comparison that despite this deprivation, 5-year-olds living in the West Midlands have 30% less tooth decay than those living, for example, in a comparative area in London.
It's nice to see Newcastle on the good end of a health story. I'm from Newcastle. It's nice to see we've been represented. We've got fluoride. We're doing all right. There might be loads of other problems, but we're okay. It's fine. We've got fluoride water. We've got something going for it.
It's a great town. I love Newcastle.
Yeah. Oh, it's the best. We love it. But so is Birmingham. Don't get me wrong. We're
well, that's just one area we'll have to agree to disagree on.
Well, what can the dental profession be doing to inform more people about water fluoride? It's great to have conversations like this, and I'm hopeful that people are going to take a lot away from it. But if we want to get the information out to a really wide scale, what more can they do?
Well, again, this has been an ongoing process for as long as I can remember. We've got 35,000 dentists in the UK. Dentists and their teams constantly banging the drum on this message about water fluoridation. But also there's a whole society. If any of your listeners literally just type in British Fluoridation Society, there's decades worth of really, really great information there, and it's really nicely packaged. So it tells you all about the benefits. It tells you all about the history, and so you can really make an informed decision. If somebody asks you about it as well. And then, of course, it's so fantastic. The Oral Health Foundation this is a subject that's been on the agenda literally since the Oral Health Foundation was born, which I'm presuming was before you were born.
Yeah, just a bit.
As well. And this is why it's great having events like National Smile Month, because along with all the other public health messages, this is such an important one. And so really the whole dental profession is continuing to work sort of day and night to sort of really hammer home these key messages. The first being, of course, better diet, and better diet, which of course is not just good for our oral health, it's good for the rest of our bodies as well. Regular toothbrushing with Oral-B products, or indeed any other products, but also supervised brushing for children as well. That's a key. That really is a key message. That children, again, they don't understand. They don't understand what fluoride is. They don't understand what tooth decay is. They've never had any experience of it. They can't be expected to, and so supervised brushing of children for me is absolutely one of the key elements, and literally just brushing their teeth with them, showing them how to do it, teaching them how to do it, and then keep teaching them until they can absolutely do it on their own, and then supervise them doing it on their own. So you know that then eventually when they leave home that they're going to have really, really good messages to give to their children, and so the whole health of the oral health of the nation continues to improve and improve. And then the final piece of the jigsaw is this fluoridation. So if we can fluoridate the whole of the UK, then we'll all get the benefits of having fluoride in the water, and so this is going to protect the teeth as they're developing, and also it's going to protect them, as it says on the British Health Foundation fluoridation website, literally up until your age 75 or more. It's going to continue to protect our teeth. So, you know, on that subject, just some sort of final messages for your listeners. Again, if you look at the studies across the world, they show that more children in fluoridated areas have no decay in their teeth at all. On average, the statistics show that fluoridation saves around 2 teeth per child from tooth decay. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the latest statistics show that at that time, every day 177 children were having teeth extracted in hospital under general anaesthetics, which is a massive drain on a health service which is now, of course, under more strain than it's ever been in its history since 1948. By just that alone cost the NHS £41.5 million per year for children to have their teeth taken out in hospitals. So if we can eliminate that, or even massively reduce that, this is going to be a massive benefit to all of those kids, to all of those parents, but it's going to be a massive benefit to our amazing National Health Service as well. And then sort of finally, the British Society of Paediatric Dentistry, or that's children's dentistry, they published a position statement on water fluoridation, and it says this about water fluoridation, that it's unique in its ability to reach all people at minimal cost, and that a fluoridated water supply allows populations to drink and cook with water that will benefit their oral health. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Dr Louis Mackenzie there talking about water fluoride. Now, if you want to learn more about National Smile Month, then you can go to smilemonth.org or follow us on social media. And you can also get bespoke oral health advice by talking to our dental helpline. All of their information as well will be below. Now, I really hope that you enjoyed, and thank you for listening.